everybody. I'm Dr. Heather Denniston, and as always, this is the Junk You Should Know show that airs on Friday, noon PST, every week on the Well Fit and Fed Facebook page. With me today is one of my absolute favorites, James Garrett. Thank you for joining me, James.
Thank you, Heather. Great to be here.
It's been a long time since you and I have got on an interview. I'm so pleased that you could carve out the time, because right now you're very busy with some speaking, some online courses, your Deep Change project, which we're going to get to. My favorite part of just before the show is you texted me and said, I need to eat a few more bites of lunch. And I'm like, absolutely, because you need to be well fed before you get on this show. And we're going to launch into that because, of course, food is brain food if you're eating the right stuff. And our show today is called Brain Hacking Your Way to a Better You, and you are the master. So can I just share a little bit about what I know about what you're doing, and then have you fill in the holes for me?
For sure.
Okay, great. Well, James and I met a couple of years back in a professional capacity and have worked together on and on since in some interviews, and I took his course, and it's just been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. And end of last year, I started to see some stuff online about this Deep Change project that was going to happen. And if people wanted to sign up, they could. And I wasn't really sure what it was. So I jumped on the Facebook page, and lo and behold, it's excellent content-packed, a content-packed product that is you exploring, trying, doing the work for us to understand how do we hack our brain to a healthier self, a healthier mental being, a healthier physical being. And you've tried all of it. You've tried the Muse headband thing, the Oura ring, you've tried all of the different things, and we're going to get into that a little bit today. But let's start with, where did that idea come from? This whole Deep Change project idea, how was that conceptualized? And can I just say, you're doing it in the most authentic way I've ever seen anybody do this. You're super vulnerable. You're talking about what kinds of changes you want to see in your own life. And I think that's part of the attraction for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are following you on this. So tell me a little bit about the inception of it, and how you got started, and what the journey has been like for you.
Yeah, great question. So I've always been fascinated by neuroplasticity, right? Neuroplasticity is just your brain's ability to rewire itself. It's an inherent property of the brain. Brains are good at this. This is what learning is, right? But I wanted, so the reason I got fascinated by neuroplasticity, and this is more self-disclosure, is I have like a family history of OCD. And so OCD is something that's haunted me throughout my life, and something I've hidden, because of the embarrassment and shame of it. And so about 3.5 years ago, I ended up pretty intensively doing a lot of meditation and trying to rewire my brain. I didn't really realize how much it would help with that in particular, although that's always been in the back of my mind. But in the period of, it hasn't been a lot. I use a Headspace app. I do have meditation the way everybody else does, right? And I've pretty much healed myself or rewired my brain so that I don't have that problem anymore. And so that was really inspiring to me, because I feel like I have a new brain. I feel like I have a different brain, a different me. And so as I show up in the world, it's just a different version of me. And so that's very inspiring. It's very hopeful. They call neuroplasticity the hopeful science. It means you can change. And it got me thinking, well, if I can do that with something as sort of stubborn as what I was, challenged with, what else is possible? Like what are the boundaries of neuroplasticity? How far can we push those boundaries? What can we actually become? And I think we haven't really asked those questions seriously. And so that's why I wanted to do the Deep Change project.
That's fantastic. And so when you started out in January, did you have sort of, okay, I'm going to do this in January, I'm going to do this in February, I'm going to do this in, did you have a plan of attack for the program? Or was it kind of, as you studied throughout the year, you're like, oh, I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try this?
A little of both.
Okay.
A little of both. So, I think what really lights me up is the idea that I can develop traits or these qualities that are basically stable So again, think of it like this, right? Think of yourself as an upgraded 2.0 version of you.
Yeah.
Like what would that version of you look like? That's really the question I'm sort of asking, right? And so for me, stress reduction was a massive one. So I think the brain comes with these kind of inherent systems for how it deals with challenges. So stress is one of them, and stress ends up being, especially when it goes for too long, just very unhelpful. I mean, we're mostly dealing with kind of 2019 kind of problems, which are usually head problems or cognitive problems or work problems or relationship problems. We're not under imminent physical threat as much as we maybe were in the past. No tigers lurking in the trees. And so a stress response is really a physical way to deal with a mental problem. And so, I'm like, well, can I erase stress from my brain? Can I retrain my brain so that when challenges hit me, it's like I get excited by them as opposed to threatened by them?
Very good.
And so the answer, I think, is yes. And so anyway, January, February, about stress. Stress is a 1.0 program, trying to increase that to a 2.0 program, which is mindful, stress to mindfulness. Then March and April were from distraction to focus. May and June were from a negativity bias to a positivity bias. So this is about joy and positive psychology. July and April about creativity, how to actually get the creative, kind of live that kind of flow, that creative,
I love that
place that we know our brains could get into, but they often don't stay there, right? And then right now I'm working on fearlessness. So I'm trying to kind of erase fear from my brain right now.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Will people be able to, like, if I wasn't a part of the group and I was listening to you right now and I'm like, that sounds awesome, can I jump into the Facebook group now? And is it too late? Do I need to start again next year? Or what's your recommendation there?
Oh, for sure. So just on Facebook, just search Deep Change Project.
Okay.
Ask to be added. I can't add you unless you ask to be added. But that's the central hub of where I post everything.
Oh, that's great. And then will you be running through this curriculum again starting in January, do you think? Will you be going through it again, or will it be a different format?
So it's a really good question. So right now I'm doing this, it's like sort of this grand experiment for me, right? I'm the scientist and the subject of my own experiment with a sample size of just one person. So I think of it as I'm trying to just get through the experiment right now with these kind of goals and outcomes that I'm after. And then it is very replicable. So I built it in a way that if somebody else wanted to do their own deep change project and had goals or sort of, again, traits or this sort of 2.0 version of themselves that they wish they could become, that they could tailor to, again, what they're interested in and most excited by, I have designed it in a way that it is replicable. And so I'm thinking of it in that way where the group can be sort of like a supportive community for people who want to try this in 2020.
I love that. And I now, come on, there's got to be a book in the future on this, I hope, because that works really well for folks as well. But the work is incredible. So let's just jump in a little bit more about the peak things that you've learned along the journey, maybe some of the tech that you found super helpful. I'd love to hear a little bit about those two things.
Yeah, so a couple things that you can't see coming. I wish I'm actually going to turn this because I think this will be fun for people to see who are watching.
Oh, sure.
So these are you can see.
Oh my gosh.
These are my habit charts up on my wall.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So these are my daily habits, and I have so what you end up finding is there's these kind of levers you pull to rewire your brain, and one of the biggest ones is habits, right? So neurons are a technology that turn experience into biology.
Okay, say that again, please.
Neurons are a technology that turn experience into biology.
Okay.
And so what happens is, as you're going for that morning run every day at 6 a.m. or whatever the new behavior you're trying to do is, you're actually rewiring your brain. So you're convincing your brain that the neurons that are responsible for linking that alarm sound or the experience of getting out of bed or whatever it is with the, like, I go straight to the closet, get my running, gear on, and I'm out the door, that all of those motor motions, you link all those together and they physically actually link up in the brain.
Huh.
Neurons that fire together wire together is the phrase from Donald Hebb, who coined this idea. And essentially it's just conditioning, right? We're essentially just conditioning. It's like classical conditioning where we're pairing two things that we tell our brain these things are supposed to go together, right?
Okay.
In the morning time, first thing, which is a time of day, brains are good at keeping track of time. What I'm supposed to do, these two things are go together, is go for my morning run, right? And so eventually that becomes really easy for the brain over time because it becomes automatic and unconscious. It's no longer a decision, it's a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've done, I do 3 new habits every month.
Adding on to your old ones, or because some of your old ones have become more automatic, you now can let them drop off and add. Yes or no?
So sorry, I meant 3 new habits every 2 months because I'm working in 2-month increments. The reason I'm working in 2-month increments is it takes about 2 months for neuroplasticity to stabilize.
Okay.
It takes 2 months to form a habit, for example. And so so I do 3 new habits, and then I'm actually adding 3 additional habits every 2 months.
Okay.
So right now I do 15 habits a day, which sounds insane, like on the face of it. But what I find is because habits become easier over time, it doesn't feel that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Because it's incremental.
Yeah. And if we think about it, and you've said this to me before, we have hundreds of habits that we do every day that have become automatic maybe when you were 2 or 4 or 13 or 15, and you don't even think of them as habits anymore. Brushing your teeth is a great example for those that brush their teeth. And so once it does get that automaticity, then adding another one isn't burdensome. It's just like, oh, this is a new thing. So I think that's great. And you did mention the 60-day habit thing. I also learned that from you originally. You had done some research to look at all the different data that says how long does a habit take to form, and the most conclusive was that it's 66 days. Am I right about that? Yeah. Right. Okay, so that's important for people to know because I think there's this 21-day this and a 30-day that. And don't be deceived, people, because it takes longer to whatever you're doing during that time. So that's
which is part of the reason I ended up taking a year to do this project, right? Because I'm interested in deep change, right? I'm not interested in surface change. I'm not interested in feeling better. I'm interested in being different, like being better, right? And so that's a deeper transformation. Yeah. And I think one of the things we've mistaken collectively is that change is easier than it actually is. It's not that it's hard. It's hard in the beginning and then gets easier over time. That's the reality. But it takes longer than we want it to. And so I'm also trying to sort of challenge a little bit the kind of quick fix culture, right, that we tend to want. Because, of course, brains don't like to do things that are difficult because brains are energy Scrooges, right? They have plenty of energy. They just don't like to spend it. And so it makes perfect sense why we like the idea of a quick fix. But when it comes to neuroplasticity, it takes a little bit more of an investment, but then that investment will pay off over time in droves.
Yeah, that's so great. And I like what you said about your brain doesn't like to, it likes to be efficient. It doesn't like to spend energy. And that's such a great segue. Just for a minute, I would love to talk about the whole concept of willpower and pushing through it and sort of the brain battery and how when you're adapting these habits, it's very important that you are healthy from a lot of ways, from an energy standpoint, how your sleep is feeding and all of that. Because if you don't have the full brain battery, then I imagine implementing these new habits becomes very difficult.
Yeah, it really does. And you're right. There's some kind of, Gretchen Rubin would call them like foundation habits. Sleep, eating, and exercise are really the three big ones.
Mm.
Um, Above and beyond that, I would probably add meditation,
Mm-hmm.
um, and for me, reading as well. So I like my morning routine is reading, exercise, and meditation.
Awesome.
But no, if you're not sleeping well, for sure, like you're not. And when I say well, we're almost all of us are underslept
Mm-hmm.
by about an hour,
Mm.
sometimes like 2 hours.
Mm.
So we need on average 7 to 9 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Is what the research shows. The best book on this is Why We Sleep by by Matthew Walker, UC Berkeley neuroscientist. Why We Sleep. 7 to 9 hours, which again, most of us are getting 6 to 6.5, right?
Yeah.
And some of us are getting 5 to 6, right?
Yeah.
So we're all a little bit underslept, and we think that doesn't make that big of a difference, but this can be deceiving. Our reaction times, our cognitive flexibility, we get more rigid in our thinking. We're more irritable. Our emotions overtake us more easily. We're much more distractible. And I think this is a big one for people. You're going to find yourself on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest a lot more when you don't have that extra hour of sleep.
Yeah, that's it. Those are interesting connections that a lot of people, I imagine, do not make. And so, side note, you have an incredible capacity to pull titles and authors. Is that just a thing with you? Like, you just know how to do that? Or is that a practiced art?
It's part of my reading habit. It's how I think about the world. I think through the lens of research. And so I started this habit about 3.5 years ago of reading a book a week, and it's just served me. I didn't used to share that because I worry that people would feel bad, because a book a week is a lot. It's about 36 pages a day, right? But it's changed my life. It's changed my life, and I think it's important to share that.
Yeah.
And so, I can't say I don't know how else to do that, except that they do. It does easily come to me
Good for
because
you.
I'm always in books. Yeah.
No, and that was another side question I had too. Because you read an incredible vast amount of nonfiction of like really learned type stuff, do you go cover all the way through to the end? Or do you read bits and pieces and allow yourself to put it down? Because I know people out there are intimidated, because I know I finally had to give myself permission. I love nonfiction. I never read the whole book. And I'm okay with that now. And so, but what about you? Like, do you read every single word?
Yeah, so this is a great question. There's different approaches here. So I'm really protective of choosing what I read. So I never read anything that I have to read. I always read from a place of intrinsic motivation. So I look at my bookshelf. In fact, I don't usually choose the book I'm going to read until Sunday night for the following week.
Okay.
Because I keep it fresh and exciting and interesting. I'm always at a bookstore. I'm always looking on Amazon. I'm always looking at used bookstores to keep the cost down. And I'm always kind of restocking, and I'm always keeping the novelty fresh. I think that's really important. Good. But once I start a book, I almost always do finish it. Now, I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I think there is wisdom in putting it down if you don't like it or if you get bored with it. Part of the reason it works for me is because I'm working through books at a fast enough pace that even if I'm bored, I know there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm giving the author the benefit of the doubt, and maybe by the last chapter they're going to bring it all together and make it really, really profound, right? So
no, that's great. You're an inspiration to me on that. Other than our internal tech of neurons wiring and changing biology, has there been any of the crazy stuff that's out there? I say crazy tongue in cheek because there's a lot of newfangled, what appears to be faddish type technology for brain hacking. Can you've tried a lot of this stuff. What should people where should they spend their money? Where should they spend their time? What are your thoughts on that?
So it depends what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Different brain tech. So brain tech is a new and emerging. Sometimes they call it neurotech. It's a new and emerging space that will continue to grow and really explode. I think in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a even though it's a pretty robust industry, it's still kind of a very young industry. So yes, there will be a lot of confusion. There will be a lot of products that aren't that great, etc. Here's the if you want stress reduction. My favorite one is Apollo Neuroscience. Their product isn't even out yet. I was using their beta product, but if you go to apolloneuro.com,
okay,
you can get on their email list and they'll tell you when it comes out. It should be coming out in the next month or two. But that's amazing for reducing stress. Just you wear it on your wrist. It feels like a cat purring on your wrist.
oh my gosh.
So it's like a vibrational frequency that stimulates your vagus nerve and calms your whole body down. That's really powerful for stress. If you want neuroplasticity increase, which is one of the most interesting ways, is what they call neuropriming. And that's through a light electrical current that you can put on your brain and stimulate different parts of your brain. The leader in this is Halo Neuroscience.
Okay.
Halo is primarily marketed for athletes and musicians, so it's repetitive motor movement is really what they specialize in. And basically, their claim, and the research backs this up, is that you can learn about 50% faster if you're priming with these. So, of course, all the athletes are using it, that sort of thing. But if you play the guitar or piano as well, again, anything repetitive this is their jam. And that's now moving into, they call this transcranial direct stimulation. That's actually the acronym.
Direct stimulation.
Yeah, so it's actually, so there's this kind of very new space, which is called e-meditation, which is electronic meditation, where you're actually stimulating your brain while meditating. So that will accelerate your meditation. There's a really interesting company called Zendo, who their product's also not out yet, but they're I think will be one of the leaders in this space. And I think that's where it's going, right? Think of it this way, right? If I can get the brain of a monk who's meditated for 40 or 50 years in 1 or 2 or 5 years, that's a huge difference, right? And so that's what we're kind of looking at, is how do you get your adult brain to behave more like a kid's brain in terms of how fast it learns. If you want auditory feedback while you're meditating, Muse, their website is choosemuse.com. Muse Headband is one of the best for that. So there's a lot out there.
Great, though. That's a great list.
On the Facebook, great.
And if you missed that, I'll put links back to James's Facebook spots where he talks about these individual things, just so you can learn more about that. And so, James, your main website is called Brain by Design, and you have some online courses on there on productivity, on happiness. What's the third one?
Productivity, happiness, and habits.
Habits, that's right. And really amazing work. For anybody who's listening, I've been through the program, and it is excellent and very user-friendly, very just great interface, and it's great. So if you're interested in some of these kinds of ways of changing brain and ways of thinking of things differently, ways of forming new habits in your life, James's program on brainbydesign.com is excellent. What do you think in the coming years, what are people going to be seeing with some of this brain science? What else is going to be coming out there? Where are we going to be focusing? Meditation, like if you just even look at meditation over the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, people are meditating who didn't even know the word, 5 years ago. And I love that. And so it's super powerful. So are there some other, I mean, you're on the forefront, you're seeing all the latest and greatest coming out. Where are we focusing next, like in the next 5 years? Primarily.
So there's kind of 2 different roads. One is, I mean, the main one is, I think the big conversation. So there's these 3 camps, right? One are these kind of think of them as non-invasive things that help with mental health. So that Apollo Neuroscience thing, they're marketing a lot of their stuff at anxiety challenges, right? Anxiety disorders and the rest. So another way of saying that is I think you're going to see a huge decrease in medicating ourselves. Yes. And a huge increase in stuff that's no side effects, a lot less invasive, something you wear. They're more like wearables for treatment instead of ingesting a chemical that's working on your whole body, but you only want it to work on your brain. There's a whole host of challenges with. So obviously, you know, that's interesting. I think the big deal though for me is really in the stim. We call it brain stim or brain stimulation. So again, there's a lot of different ways to do this. One of the more cutting edge ways, which is very much still in the clinic and in the lab, is they call it they actually use ultrasound technology. For a couple of reasons. One is it can get much deeper into the brain, and it's very accurate in terms of where it's stimulating. So it can get so there's basically a lot of research around this right now, but ultrasound as a technology is, you know, will over the next, you know, I think 5 years or something, we'll have a consumer product where we will be able to use this kind of technology to do brain stim on ourselves. So this is really interesting, right? So there's some research showing that, you know, if you stimulate, if you deactivate part of your left temporal lobe and you activate or stimulate a portion of your right temporal lobe, which are these kind of two sides of our brain, you know, you suddenly have like massive idea flow. So you have like this, you turn into this way creative version of yourself. And so that's already been shown in the lab, right? We've already done the research on this. We already know this is possible. So the question is like, well, how does that translate from the lab to people's real lives? And that's you know, the market and businesses and startups that are going to kind of solve those problems.
Oh yeah.
But it's really interesting.
You know what that reminds me of is Jill Bolt's Stroke of Genius, her TED Talk on
My Stroke of Insight. Yeah.
My Stroke of Insight. Is that what she called it? Well, it's exactly that, because her left side shut down, her right side was suddenly free to do what it wanted to do. And she talked about the creativity and all of that stuff. I mean, that was fascinating. And so you mentioning that, it's like, oh yeah, that makes absolute sense. So that will be interesting to see where that science goes.
Yeah, honestly, you know, I think you look at the big things we worry about as humans, you know, we're overly self-conscious, we trend anxious, like there's these massive kind of universals, I guess, when it comes to brains. And I think in the next decade, say, I think we're going to get close to nudging closer towards solving some of that stuff. So again, think of you getting out of your head. You know, and just being yourself, like stop worrying about what other people are thinking about you. I think neurotech is going to help move the needle on problems like that, which I find really, really intriguing.
Oh, for sure. I think it's super powerful. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me just recap. brainbydesign.com is where people can go to your general website and find some of your classes there. Deep Change Project on Facebook page is a great place to go and look at the most recent project from James, which is this Deep Change, brain hacking himself to a new him, to a 2.0, as he puts it. And are there any other things we should know of how to reach you, how to get a hold of you, how to find out more about what you're doing?
No, I'm doing a little bit more brain coaching, so I do one-on-one coaching as well. So,
and
through my website.
So the one-on-one coaching, can they get to that through your Brain by Design? Is there a link there?
There is, yep.
Okay, excellent. That's great. Well, this was fantastic, as usual. James, I'm always enlightened and inspired when you and I have a visit. So thank you so much for coming on the Junk Show today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And for those of you who are watching live, thank you so much. We had quite a few people coming and checking out the show today. I really appreciate that. For those of you watching in replay, I love you just as much. And remember, the Junk Show always lives on YouTube forever. So go over to the Well Fit and Fed YouTube page, subscribe so that you can get notifications of the Junk Shows when they air. James, I know you and I will be in touch. Stay on after I say goodbye we say goodbye to everybody, and we will look forward to circling back with you again in the future and seeing what's new with your projects. I'm always like super excited to see that. So thank you so much for joining me today, James. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So glad to be here. Thanks, Heather.
Awesome. Okay, guys, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you soon.